Welcome to another episode of Lead with Jeffrey. I'm Jeffrey Hernandez. I am your host, and today in our studio, we have the honor of having a power couple. Most of us, as we open a business and we have the opportunity to do so with our husbands, with our wives, the fear always comes, can we leave work at work? And when we get home, can we be honey and babe? And this power couple, 15 years later, not only have done it, they've been successful at scaling their business and being able to build a beautiful family. So in this moment, I have the honor of introducing to you Adriana Menendez and Lazaro Menendez, the owners of a daycare and many more businesses that they have. We know that today they'll share with us all of the experiences they bring to the table. And co-hosting with me this podcast is Artur Glantz, the Chief Operating Officer for our organization. As I've mentioned in most of my podcasts, mentoring those that work around you is very important. And today I share the space with him as a mentoring opportunity for him to understand the future of NAPE. So, Lazaro and Adriana, tell us a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, how did you start the business?
Thank you, Jeffrey, for having us here today. We started the business around 2009. We actually initiated the process in 2008. It was an idea that came about a few years prior, and we actually put into fruition, obviously, once the real estate market took a turn, which I've been in now for about 20 years or so. So when that took place, we decided to go ahead and just take the plunge. I mean, we have been talking about it for a long time. We actually had the name for about 6 years prior to the business actually opening its doors. And once we realized that, real estate was really starting to struggle, thankfully, Adri had actually gone through the process of getting her degree in education while being pregnant, if I can mention that. And I was traveling, so it was quite, hard for her to do, but she was able to accomplish that. She had a toddler at home that was about 2 years old at that time. And at the same time, she was going to school and being pregnant with Amanda, our youngest at the time. Come around 2008, we decided to go ahead and open the school. And in 2009, March of 2009, when we actually opened our doors. It was a struggle at first. Obviously, we were, jumping into something we had no idea on how to manage and run. But here we are 15 years later, and it's been a success story at least.
And prior to opening the business, you had a job of your own. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was and what made you get inspired to say, goodbye job, let me go join my wife in this business?
Well, I was in real estate. As I mentioned, in 2003, I started doing real estate. And through, how should I say, I don't want to say coincidence, but through some clients that I was working with, I got into doing what was called back then condo conversions. It was a very hot thing at the time. We had some great years. We got into buying and basically selling off condominium buildings. We were buying apartment buildings and converting them to condominiums. So basically, that was something that was doing great. Adriana was able to take some time off from work. She wasn't working for about 3 years, I'd say, give or take, more about 3-4 years. And at that time, we were doing great. When the business took a turn, it was really the only thing that we were left with because at the time in real estate, banks were not lending. Nothing was happening with real estate. It was basically a very hard time for anyone that was in real estate. Okay, so this was really where we put all our eggs in that one basket. And at the time, it just seemed like, we needed the both of us to really collectively work together and get the business off the ground. And as I mentioned, it was really not so much something that I wanted to do because I always loved real estate. It was something that, we needed to do. And it was something that was needed in order for us to get that business off the ground.
In that moment you were making the decision, I want to open this business. I'm going to open it with my wife. What fears did you have knowing that you'd be spending 24/7 with the person that you chose to be your partner, the mother of your children, and to be by your side for the rest of your life? And now you have to be with her in a business organization and, more importantly, make decisions around the business with her.
It was tough. I can't say that it wasn't. Thankfully, we've known each other since she was 14. So as far as getting along goes, we get along rather well. We joke around a lot, but we had never really worked together. So
very different.
Oh, very, very different. We definitely had, different styles. At the time, I want to say that I was a little bit more aggressive. We've kind of changed roles, where before I was more in charge of, handling employees, for example, where right now she's a powerhouse when it comes to employees and doing everything that needs to be done. I've become more of a passive role. But back then, without a doubt, it was challenging. It was challenging at first, but we seem to have been on the same page for the most part because we were learning as we went. So during that learning process, it's easier to be on the same page. We're learning a business together. Now there are many times when I'm actually learning from her because she's really dove into the business 100%. She understands how to work with a lot of these government programs. She's definitely gotten a lot more experience on what it's like to work with employees. I tend to be a little bit more aggressive, if you want to say that. Whenever we have an issue with an employee, now she's the one that kind of calms me down. And she's like, no, we got to handle this way. And it's a good balance. It's definitely a good balance. But there are times when, we're in a business where obviously you want to react immediately to situations that rise. But sometimes that's not the best approach either.
So you were in your business, your daycare operated 6 to 6 every day. Beyond that, you had the after hour work, and then you got home. How did you make sure that what happened during the day did not transfer to your dining room table at dinner time?
I mean, if there were some pressing matters that perhaps we weren't able to take care of during the day, we would definitely talk about them. Thankfully, it was nothing too serious where it would, in any way, at least that I recall, affect our relationship. Again, because we got along well, because I like to believe still get along well. We were able to get through pretty much anything that was thrown at us. And, again, starting a business from scratch with no prior experience, there was a lot thrown at us at all times.
So in your particular culture, there is a concept around, I'm the man, I wear the pants in the house. Mm-hmm. Now you go to the business, you're equal owners. No more pants in the house. Now it's who's the decision maker, who has the best decision. How did you deal with that? Were there any circumstances in which you had trouble with that?
None at all. And I'll tell you why. When we first opened this business, I had actually been pretty clear with her and saying, this business, in my opinion, is going to be more yours than mine in terms of running it and managing it, simply because I came from the standpoint of perhaps even a little bit of that. I came from the point of being a father of 2 young girls. And I said to myself, and always felt and still feel, that a man at a daycare, unless you're carrying a hammer in your hand, you just don't belong there. Mm-hmm. Perhaps that's just the Cuban side of me that kind of sees things that way. You know what I'm saying? And yes. But I think that, again, as a man, as a father of 2 young ladies, if I was to enter a preschool, I feel a lot more comfortable walking into a setting where it's predominantly women than I would be, say, every man in there is a teacher. It's just the way that I see it. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I'm sure that there are plenty of operators that are male that, at times they either work behind the scenes or are there on a regular basis.
So I hear in your conversation that you had a vision that was very clear around what role you were going to occupy in the business and what role she was going to occupy. So, Adriana, tell us a little bit about that conversation. How did that conversation take place, and how did those specific roles get decided?
I think it was, I don't think it was a rule or anything. It was just something unspoken because we both were on the same wavelength. Even shopping around for a childcare for my daughter, before we owned one, we would see a man and we were like, it was always, no, she's not going to go here. And not anything wrong or anything like that. It's just something that was embedded, a perception embedded. Yes. And I just said, you can't be in a 2-year-old classroom with kids on your laps or changing diapers. It's just, it's frowned upon. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not that a woman wouldn't be worse or anything, but it's just something that we from the get-go he knew that it was going to be a woman run business, and what you see in my daycare is all women in the classrooms working with children.
So you were the operations guy, and you were the academics, yes, registration and day-to-day leadership.
He was there they called him Handy Manny.
And it's true. I mean, most of the time that I was at the daycare, I was definitely doing something around there. I was fixing something. At the very beginning, it was mostly just marketing. For me, I would leave her at the daycare basically all day, just having people come in and enroll them and whatnot. I was out knocking on doors in every single business in the Miami Lakes area, which is where we have our center, and basically offering the major corporations that had plenty of employees 10% off for the first 6 months, for example, that kind of stuff. And a lot of guerrilla marketing is what they call it, just going to Publix, for example, at 5 o'clock. I mean, how many moms are at Publix at 5 o'clock trying to get, stuff for dinner? So I'd be passing out flyers at Publix. If you had a stroller, I'd run 2 miles to catch you. That's
old school marketing.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, there's a lot of young entrepreneurs out there, and even entrepreneurs that are making the decision to join efforts with their partner. Would you recommend it? Yes. Why?
Well, I think that first and foremost, I would recommend it because you're, if anything, I think it can bring you closer. I think that for as long as there is the dynamic where you do get along, where you guys can actually laugh together, not only at the workplace, but at home, be able to brush off the things that work that you can't do much about. I mean, there are some things that you have control over and there are some things that you don't. So I do recommend it. I think if anything, if you have that base already where you as a couple do get along and, having a business, I think can only strengthen that relationship some more. I think communication is key. I think understanding where each one is coming from is key. And I definitely believe that, you have to listen to the other person, not just hear them.
Do you feel that you had to change hats between we are a couple at home and we are business partners at work? Did you have to change hats? How did you do that? How did you designate that conversation when it was taking place?
I don't.
See, that's a realness that we want to see.
For me personally, I've never changed my hat. I am who I am all the time. Yeah. I mean, you're going to find me to be joking all the time, have fun all the time. I like to believe that I'm very easygoing, which I think kind of works against me sometimes. I think that being too passive can actually have an effect on you, where now all of a sudden, you're passive enough to where the person next to you just flies right by you. Mm-hmm. And then now you got to catch up to them and be able to kind of bring them down a little bit and say, hey, there's some adjustments, some areas that we need to work on. Mm-hmm. But that person is now going 100 miles an hour and you're still doing 75. So you really got to get them to slow down a little bit and say, hey, listen, there are some things that we need to talk about that we need to make some changes on. And is basically just getting to that point of understanding that as long as you hear one another out, understand the differences, what one person is trying to say over the other. No one may be right, no one may be wrong, but just finding that middle road where you can actually now say, okay, this is where I think we should be, and this is why we should be there, and hopefully find a middle road somewhere.
How about you? Would you recommend it? Yes, no, why?
Yes, I feel like I'm that person that you were talking about. I mean, it did bring us closer together. It's a partnership. But who better than with your spouse? Mm-hmm. The person that's going to be there to make that decision with you, because you both have the same goal in mind. We want to grow. We want to, make money. We want to, have a thriving business. And so who else better than with your spouse? Sure, there's challenging times. There's things that we agree and disagree on because I am more present in the business and I see things for what they are. He's more of behind the scenes. He's like the silent partner. But, so
in the marriage or in the business?
In the business.
I still raise my hand.
Yeah. And so I come home and I'm like, this situation happened, and he's more, again, just, do what you have to do. And I'm like, no, calm, relax. This is the way it's going to be handled because it's just different. I'm more passive now when it comes to, doing things. But I certainly recommend it.
But see, those moments are important because you just mentioned the disagreements of how to handle something.
Yeah.
But then you still got to get home and have dinner.
Yeah.
How did you change your mindset on that drive? home, into the garage, through the door, sitting at dinner time?
I think it's not so much coming home and unloading the day. It's more of having a conversation like, can you believe this happens? Or can you believe, I don't think we've ever brought our business home. It's just like when I turn off that light, that's where it stays. But sometimes, there's events that happen, like, oh, this is what we're going to be doing next month, or very little conversation, but that I unload the day. No, I don't think we've either one of us. He still continues his real estate business, and yes, I see worries in his face sometimes, and I'm like, what's going on? Because you know your spouse, and what's going on? What's your worry? Stuff like that. But other than that, we really learned how to make that switch or turn that switch off once we get home. My thing.
That leads me to another conversation that is really important. You make this business, you develop it, you work hard at it, and then you each go off into different businesses. You went into your digital marketing, into your Beachbody exercise. You went back to real estate, but you still have this business that you both are running. How do you manage that time to have the time to still be together for that one business that you both are in, and then still do the ones you are doing individually?
I'll tell you, but 2020...
We know who's in charge right now.
2020 proved to be the turning point for all of that. I think it's a universal rule that everybody's lives change. But 2020 brought on a moment where I was home, something I was not accustomed to. He was more of the one staying at home because they, real estate realtors, they stay at home. They just research property. No, they do more of the desk work and stuff. And I was going to a physical location from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning to whenever. So when I found myself in a situation at home with him 24/7, tensions arise. And, he's asking me questions. I'm like, no, I'm not used to you asking me questions all day. Mm-hmm. I answer to my employees and children. So and plus having the girls at home, they were still in high school. That was all very challenging.
So let's capitalize on 2020, because I think that most of the audience that is in the process of opening a business together with their husbands, their wives, or their significant others, they're going to confront the 2020 moment where he is asking the questions and he's not as passive. And those tensions that you're mentioning start to arise. What strategies did you use? What protocols did you put in place? Because all of those things are important to ensure that 15 years later, you're still here. 4 years after 2020, you're still here and counting.
That was the first moment that I got to recline my chair and really be present as a wife, as a family, as a mom, because against his we don't have the funds. I said, I am hiring a director because my girls are home. And that was, it's almost like everything happens for a reason. It was the moment that I first hired a director that I literally let someone handle my baby, what I've worked so hard to build, let somebody else handle in my absence. And so that was a big change for us. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, obviously, yes. 2020 was a very trying year. She's been after me for quite some time before 2020 to go ahead and hire a director. And we had actually spoken about it. But, again, there's the concern with the funds. In addition to that, it's your baby. And it's one of those things where, and you have to understand that through life and business generally, if you want to grow, you got to learn to delegate. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's something that we were having a hard time with doing, delegating. And we see that a lot of businesses actually stay very stagnant because they don't learn to delegate. Mm-hmm. And there's the fear of saying, well, I mean, if I have one location, I'm already underwater. If I have 2 or 3 locations, I'm just going to be that much deeper in water. Mm-hmm. I tend to agree and disagree in the sense that, in order for you to grow, you have to learn to delegate. and at the same time hire the right people to be able to manage it for you, so that now you have more time to yourself. And that became even more evident once we did go ahead and hire that administrator during a time that was really trying, because again, with COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen. There were a lot of uncertainties, right? So we decided to go ahead and hire this person who's now been, for the most part, at the front, and it's given her the ability to do other things. And we've learned to say, okay, well, here we are. We got some time for us to do other things. And she's actually been able to flourish in other things, like her digital marketing and whatnot. She did Beachbody for some time. So that's given her a lot of liberty. And I think that can also be very healthy for the mind. You kind of disconnect a little bit. You have someone that's actually there that for the most part is just dealing with the smaller day-to-day stuff. And obviously she's still very much in tune with what's going on over there.
And it's the same director?
It's the same director. It's the same director.
So in 2020, when a lot of couples didn't make it through, you guys made it through.
Thankfully.
And in the aftermath of 2020, a lot of businesses, especially a lot of daycares, didn't make it through.
Yes.
And you guys didn't make it through. Was there like a moment where, babe, I don't know,
well,
whether on the marriage front or the daycare front, and one thing I love about you guys is because I've known you for a while too, it's always real. It's not like this show that you try to put on. So take us behind the scenes of Adri and Laz.
We did close down for 2 months.
Yeah. And paid our rent.
Paid our rent.
And carried our employees for about, I think, a month or so of that time. In reality, we went from having, I think it was 140 kids, 145 kids registered to literally 25 in a matter of 2 weeks. And, we were trying to keep the teachers alive, try to keep everybody floating as much as possible. And at the same time, having to pay, our rent. And I want to say having to, because I didn't want to take advantage of the situation. That's just not in my nature. And thankfully, we had the funds to be able to go ahead and continue to stay, up to date. I didn't want to create a bigger problem out of an existing problem.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question, because that's a very powerful moment. You went down to 25 students, and we're typical couples. I have a job, my wife has a job, or vice versa. So one job doesn't go well, the other one is there to support. But here, both of you are in the same job. And as our audience is listening, that could be a fear of opening a business with your partner or your wife or your significant other, because it's one revenue stream that now is the only revenue stream. Tell us a lot about that.
There are definitely some fears with that. I do real estate, and the real estate that I do, I mostly work with old clients. These are repeat offenders, if you want to call it that, investors and clients that buy and sell and whatnot. But real estate is not necessarily a 9 to 5, guaranteed business. And for that reason, it became more of a passive business. And in all honesty, our daycare became our bread and butter. Okay. And we've spoken about the possibility of growing that even further so that we don't find ourselves in that predicament again. But yes, it's hard. It's definitely hard.
So what strategies did you put in place, understanding that we're both owners of the same business? It's one revenue stream, and 2020 came up, and it could be more that happens too, because it's a moment in life that changes the financial stability as a result of being in the same business. What would you recommend to our audience around that?
Having gone through that experience, worldwide, I think is you always have to have the unforeseens, the be prepared. We weren't prepared for that. I don't think anyone was prepared for that. Thankfully, there was a lot of help out there, helping businesses. And we've been able to, as a business, maintain good rapport, good grades, if you will, to be able to get the fundings that were handed out to preschools in that time, which helped us carry over. But had that not been in place, we would have not had a business today. And that's just the honest truth, because we had nothing put away other than very little for us to survive, because we still have a household, right? So with the kids and stuff, I mean, no extracurricular activities, no nothing.
Would you say planning is
planning is key.
Is very important when the couple is in charge of the business, meaning that there's only one revenue stream?
100%. I mean, for the most part, I think that for the both of us, even with her side hustles and the things that she does on the side, it is without a doubt evident that the business itself is what truly keeps us both afloat, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that when COVID hit, it was a wake-up call. It was a time to really reflect and say, this is a reality. I mean, right now we're in a position we could potentially lose everything and find ourselves back to 2008. So it for me, it was a moment to reflect on, what happened in 2008, how we felt in 2008 versus, now here we are, a few years later and almost experiencing that same feeling. And thankfully, thanks to, some programs that became available, it is how we were able to truly manage and get through those tough times. But moving forward, I think that, budgeting yourself properly, understanding that, it's a business, not an ATM. Mm-hmm. It should not be used as an ATM. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, for small businesses, predominantly small businesses, they're S corps, and the majority of them do become an ATM. Mm-hmm. The majority of them become
but payroll still hits.
Yeah, without a doubt, payroll hits. Rent hits. Mm-hmm. Increases hit every single year, and just about everything. Insurance, everything increases every single year. So you have to plan for all these things, and I think that once as a couple, you come to the realization that you need to plan for the future because you're not the only one counting on that childcare center or business. Your kids are, your household is, and those who are around you are definitely counting on you in one way or another. Let's say through that business, I've been able to help family members, who I know. I mean, I understand that everything is very expensive. I can't believe how expensive childcare can definitely be, but it is what it is, right? So we've been able to assist families in some cases where they're not in a position to be able to pay the full amount, and we've been able to just offer a little help, whatever it may be, but anything to kind of help. So
let me ask you, you built a business 15 years, very successful, great reputation, 5-star ratings, well known in the community. You're passionate about it. It's the stream with which you made your income and you stabilize your family. Now you are at the place in your life where you've lived more than you're going to live. You have 2 daughters. You have a business. What is your success management plan?
I think for me, I definitely want to grow our business. I definitely want to see ourselves in a position where we don't have to look back at 2020 or 2008. That's going to take a lot of discipline. That's going to take a lot of growth mentally to understand the things you got to do, the sacrifices you got to make in order to get there. But I think that evidently what we're all looking for is security, right? I mean, it's as you said, we've lived more than half our lives. We're getting to a point where, I hate to say it, but 60 is getting closer and closer. Mm-hmm. And so as I don't have a 401k. I don't have a retirement plan. So these are things that, a business can provide that. So I think that more than anything is honing down on the things that we got to do in order to secure ourselves a future.
So again, planning
ahead.
When a couple is the owners of a business is very important. And in addition to the success management plan, meaning what you're doing for the rest of your time here with your business, succession is very important.
Yes.
And what thought have you given to that? What should the couples out there that are building, sacrificing a lot of time to create this business, and then life hits with a reality, and what next?
Right.
I think that's a hard one.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
I really can. Only because I feel that thankfully we're in an industry where if you continue to stay somewhat abreast to what's going on and you stay in tune, you can literally manage the business without necessarily being there. I mean, you could very well be 70 years old and still own a child care center for as long as you have the right staff in place. Other than that, succession, I mean, we have our oldest daughter, Sophia. She's interested in doing digital media, so she's not, she's not really looking to the
She's not a
business savvy.
candidate.
No,
Yeah.
she's not. My youngest Amanda the other day was actually telling me about her interest in business, that she wants to go to business school. So that may be a candidate. I have my son Justin, but he's got a career of his own as well, and I don't think there's any interest in any one of those sides.
So
There's no
that's an
succession.
important conversation because as a business owner myself, it's things that I reflect on all the time. And I know that our listeners and our followers are probably thinking about that. So I spent my whole life building this business. And then I'm not here any longer and my last breath hit. And what happens to that when the people that are coming after me, my children, may not want it? And how do I benefit from the business before I go if I'm not going to leave it to somebody?
And to answer your question, I see a lot of that where families have built a business 30, 40 years, and here comes the children who wanted nothing to do with it and take that legacy and just rip it apart and sell it off. And that's so devastating to me. And so I just want it to be a business where it's a gift that keeps on giving for my kids. And maybe we'll put something in place that it can't be sold, because it's you're creating a legacy.
It's another child.
It's another child. It's a succession. So if, right now we don't own a building, but in the future we do plan on owning the building where it's ours. So yeah, I will continue having that business there. Whether somebody comes in and buys the preschool and I still have the building, it's still going to be mine, and it's still going to be for my children, and still going to be divided amongst them. And they won't be able to sell it.
Have you taken the time to have that conversation with your two daughters around the fact that we're building this business? No one's here forever. What is your thinking around that? What are you wanting to do? Because I think the couples out there that are in the process of opening a business or probably own a business and just like you had not really sat down to think about when is it the right time to have that conversation?
I think we've had conversations with our daughters. I don't think we've dove into that deep into what comes next. They see this as forever. They see us as forever. They don't understand there's an end date, right? Oh, I know it's horrible, but it's the reality. There is the reality of life, right? But I don't think they see that.
They're still young, yeah.
They don't understand that the daycare can come to a close, or what do they want to do with it? Do they want anything to do with it? If they don't, then, that's a decision either maybe he and I will make in the future.
I did have a follow-up question to that. So something that's really important, I really didn't think of this until last summer. I took my staff on a retreat, and it was actually my chief of school operations. She was sitting next to me, and we said, do you realize our entire company leadership is on this plane? And if something happens tomorrow, who runs NAPE? and so I it was really interesting because it was the principals, APs, everyone was on that plane. You are a couple. You're the owner of your business. And for all the couples out there, it's something to think about. You go on vacation together, you go to parties together, you travel together. Have you given thought to the fact that something happens? Is there a plan that executes the next day?
That's so funny you say that, because when I was in the life insurance business, when we would go to business owners, they always had 2 separate flights. They always had everything separate. Every time they went on a trip, it was separate. I mean, I don't foresee us.
I love that. This year in the retreat, I'm going to separate everyone on the flight. Just in case.
Jeffrey and I flew together for 10 years.
So no, we haven't thought about that.
But it's something that for our listeners, we have to think about, because I could see us thinking life is normal and not realizing that in a moment life changes, and both owners, both authorities are in the same place.
To your point, I think that's actually a very common mistake between small business owners, because we tend to think that, however small the business it may be, it may start small today. It may be very big tomorrow. And if that mindset doesn't change, you're absolutely right. God forbid something does happen. Who's left with the business? I mean, are there any instructions left behind? Who is left to actually run the day-to-day and all and these are small plans that should be in place. Quite honestly, we fall under that same criteria of the small businesses that have never thought that far. But it's definitely something that we need to look into. Not that we haven't spoken about it in the past. We actually have. We just never really put it into effect.
Adriana, you said earlier that when around the 2020 period, there were sacrifices you had to make. You said we cut the extracurriculars for the kids. And this generation of young entrepreneurs, that word sacrifice and compromise is more challenging than ever. So can you take us through the balance of, speaking to your kids saying, Sophia, we can't do that right now. We'll get there. And how you coached yourselves through the sacrifice in the mirror, telling your kids that, and how you were able to say what we can sacrifice and what we can't.
I never brought up my kids thinking that everything is owed to them or that they have a entitlement to anything. I was always very black and white with my children. And when we couldn't do something, we couldn't do something. And it was understood, no explanation. So yeah, during the pandemic, they were going through their whole emotional roller coaster of not being able to see their friends, not being able to go out and do all of that. So my youngest is the one that had extracurricular activities. Knowing that she wasn't going to go to the ballet studio, she was like, okay, Mom, we'll do what we can. And she understood that. And they were okay with it. To me, it was more navigating with them, with not being able to see their friends, not being able to go to school and have that normalcy, rather than extracurricular activities. They're not materialistic, and materialistic meaning not, things, but things in life. So they were okay.
But you trained them from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I never
take away for parents today.
Do you going back to the conversation we were having around the small business owner mistake that we make, and as our audience is listening to us, it's really important that we take an opportunity to further unpack that, because I think part of our mission on this podcast is to empower, educate, so that they can lead the change and be the difference, right, versus the norm. And we know that the road less traveled is not always the one people take. Do you have instructions after my last breath that someone has access to around how to make sure the next day things don't stop?
We do not. We do not. And that's something, again, that we definitely need to address, because it's a small business. We tend to have that mentality where, we're not a Fortune 500 company. Why do we need to have these things in place? We sometimes start something that, is small today and turns out to be much greater in the future. These are plans that a lot of times, unfortunately, people do not put into place, and that I think need to be put into place. However small a business is, it really doesn't matter. Just because if it's generating income for you and it's actually assisting your family in any way, shape, or form, you should have something in place that says, hey, I can't stop this from supporting my family or assisting my family, however little it may be. And, select a person, select someone that's close to you, family relative, someone that at least that may have somewhat of a business background, to either manage it or be able to sell it. Again, just put a plan in place. So that's something we've spoken about in the past, but it just continues to be something that we kick the can down the road.
I'll get to it later.
Exactly.
And it's, it's something that should be attended to, immediately.
And so as we bring this podcast to a close, one that has been really empowering to our audience, because believe it or not, it's something that as entrepreneurship is growing, more people want to be business owners. Sure. And who do they turn to? Their significant other. Let's sign the articles of incorporation, and not realizing that has more to it than just the signature, right? I want to summarize some of the things I heard. One, I heard engagement rules need to be there. We need to understand what each of us are going to do in the business, what our roles are, what our responsibilities are, and we need to make sure that we respect that territory within the business that we own. I also heard that because it is one source of income, we need to make sure we have a plan, and that the plan is made available for those moments of the unexpected, unforeseen, like 2020 and COVID, right? I also heard that we do need a succession plan. Those conversations need to be had, just like we pay for our funeral services or our cemetery, because it's a reality that is not going to escape us, and one that we don't want everything we worked hard for to just disappear. Mm-hmm. I also heard that because you are a couple very different than most business owners, you travel together, drive together, anything could happen, and in a moment, no authority is left, and that there needs to be a plan for that. I also heard that it's a family commitment, both on the side of your kids, understanding that because it is one revenue stream, you have to be ready for anything and be able to enjoy when there's a lot and be able to hold back when there's not, right? Yeah. And that conversation needs to be held. And something you said, which I've never heard before, and it's really an amazing analogy. A small business is not an ATM, and it is a business. And particularly in the situation of a couple, that could be the go-to, right? The business becomes that ATM because you are the owners. You don't have to talk to any other owner to make a decision. And so I think in summary, all of those empowerments are really good for our audience, our followers, our subscribers, because it is important things to take into account that maybe by not having this podcast, they would not take into account and make a mistake. 100%. And so on behalf of Lead with Jeffrey, I want to thank both of you for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule, because you operate multiple businesses, to come here and educate our community, educate the people that are listening, because in today's world, we are their mentors. When we started, we didn't have this. There were no mentors other than the people around us, and some of us did not have business owners to listen to. So I really appreciate you taking time and modeling for us through your authenticity and your transparency what it is to own a business when you're husband and wife, when you're partners. So I appreciate it. And to our audience out there, our followers, our subscribers, I hope you found today's episode very enlightening and very empowering, as our purpose is to empower you with the knowledge to be able to lead the change for your life and the life of others. And it is a very common thing that couples do sign articles of incorporation, create the name of a business. They're excited about it. Reality hits. The excitement of a business is overpowered by the responsibilities and accountability. But now you are a couple in business, but still have to go home and say, I love you, good night, despite the fact that during the day, you upset me because you did something wrong. How do I change those hats? How do I make sure I understand in the business, I am your partner, I am co-owner. At home, I'm your loved one, I'm your partner. I need to support you, and I can't frown upon you because of something you did just 1 minute ago in a conversation. And being able to switch that is not an easy task. But I challenge you through the education you received today to be able to do that. Again, empowering you to be the change. Thank you for joining us for this episode, and stay inspired.